The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
So I want to share with you, in light of the conclave that just began today, some of the rules that have been laid down by the most importantly from the most, almost the most recent Pope. So Pope John Paul II, in February of 1996, he issued I think this would technically be the motu proprio, Universi Dominici Gregis, in my best Latin pronunciation. And that refers to the conclave that would follow his pontificate. And then there were some revisions that were made by Pope Benedict XVI once he became Pope. And his is Ordo Rituum Conclavis. And so this is the order of the ritual of the conclave. And I'll just give you a few things to be aware of. So these are some of the provisions that are in place that the cardinals follow. So the conclave is to begin 15 to 20 days after the Pope's death or his resignation, and that gives all the cardinal electors time to arrive. So these are some of the rules, in no particular order. The College of Cardinals of the Catholic Church is entrusted with the responsibility of governing the church during the Sede Vacante. That term, Sede Vacante, it's Latin, it means empty chair, or, it's in the terms of word order, it's chair empty, but in English we would say empty chair. What does that mean? It refers to what Jesus said at the beginning of Matthew chapter 23 when he's about to excoriate the scribes and Pharisees by calling them blind guides and brood of vipers and hypocrites and whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones, etc. But he begins by saying to the apostles, he says, whatever they teach, do that. In other words, do what they teach, because he says they have taken their seat on the chair of Moses. So at the very beginning, the first few verses of Matthew chapter 23, the Lord invokes an oral tradition from the Old Testament. There is no mention of the stone chair that tradition says that Moses would sit on when he would teach. But Jesus invokes this. He says, because they have taken their seat on the chair of Moses, but do not follow their bad example. And that's when he talks about how hypocritical they were. What they were teaching technically from the Torah and from the Tanakh, the other books of the Old Testament outside of the first 5 books, he's saying what they're teaching is true, and he ties it with this motif of sitting in a chair. That's where the word cathedra comes from. That's where you get the word cathedral from the Greek and the Latin. And they're basically, the Latin is a cognate for the Greek term cathedras. And a cathedras is a chair. And a chair is the symbol of the authority of the bishop in his cathedral, which is why it's called a cathedral, because that's where the bishop sits. There's a throne throne is a figurative term. It may not look anything like a throne, but there's a chair in each cathedral, in each Catholic, cathedral in the world, where that's the official seat or chair of the bishop. Now, the bishops, of course, they teach not sitting in the chair, but this became symbolic of the chair of Peter. So just as the Lord invokes this Old Testament oral tradition of the chair of Moses, from the earliest times, the church saw in that chair motif the symbol of the authority of the Bishop of Rome. That's why the interregnum between one pope dying and the next pope being elected, like we're in right now, is called Sede Vacante. The chair is empty. There are some people who have gone down an aberrant path and have convinced themselves, or have allowed other people to convince them, that the chair has been empty since maybe Pope Pius XII, who died in 1958. Some argue that the Catholic Church hasn't had a valid pope since then. They're called sedevacantists. It's a portmanteau. It's a word that's made out of this phrase that argues for, it's actually a false position, but it argues for this idea that Jesus did allow the church to become an orphan, did allow the church to not have a valid pope for some extended period of time. So that's where this phrase comes from, this whole idea of the chair of Peter. So continuing, The conclave must have absolute secrecy, so no communication with the outside world is permitted. Does that mean that there aren't electronic shenanigans going on? Probably there are. I'm sure the NSA and, the whatever other agencies, CIA and whoever else, they're probably doing everything they can to spy on the conclave, as are probably the other world powers. This is the era in which we live in, but at least prior to the advent of high tech, it was much easier to follow the secrecy that's required. And the reason is because they don't want the bishops to be influenced by outside persons or governments. They don't want to skew the election. They want it to be as organic and natural as possible. This is why, and you may have seen this, Cyrus, I don't know if you saw this, all of the staff at the Vatican, so the doctors, the technicians, the support staff, the people who are going to be serving food, and all of those people who will have any contact or going to be within the precincts of the conclave, they had to take an oath of secrecy. They had to swear an oath on the Gospels. They had to sign a document and then publicly say that they promise before God that they will keep everything that they might see or know about secret. And this, by the way, is under pain of excommunication. The method of election, the rules for the conclave stipulate that the voting is going to be done by secret ballot only, not by acclamation, not by, hey, who here wants to choose this guy as pope? Hands up. No, not like that. It's got to be a secret ballot. It is written, and efforts to do like a vote by acclamation where everybody agrees, those have been abolished. Those things that had been done in the past are abolished. You may say, how many votes does a cardinal need to receive in order to be elected? He has to receive a simple 2/3 majority. Now, during the conclave, the standard procedure, the standard scheduling is they have breakfast in the morning, they get to work, they have a ballot. If a pope is elected, on that ballot, you'll see white smoke coming from the chimney above the Sistine Chapel. And that, of course, presumes that the man who is elected says yes, because that's required for a valid election. If he says no, then okay, well, we start over again. If you see black smoke, and yes, they put chemicals in to make it either very clearly black or very clearly white. They used to burn wet straw as a way to do it, but now we're all high tech. If it's an inconclusive ballot, you'll see black smoke, and then there will be a bit of a break, stretch your legs, use the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, come back, and they'll have another vote. Then if that's inconclusive, they'll have lunch. And there's a couple hours of break for lunch. Then early afternoon, they come back and they have another ballot. And the same thing happens. If the ballot is inconclusive, then you'll see black smoke, a bit of a stretch break, use the bathroom, get another cup of coffee, come back, and then there's another vote for a total of 4 ballots per day. On a normal day, 4 ballots. And then at the end of the day, everybody's exhausted, so they go have dinner, drink a glass of wine, talk, whatever. Then they come back the following morning, they start all over again. Now, the rules say that if it gets to 33 or 34 ballots divided by 4, that's a long time. A lot of days have elapsed. Then it's no longer, it triggers a change in the amount of people who need to be voting for somebody to be elected. So before 34 ballots, it's 2/3 majority. But by the time you get to that point, I think the way the rules are written is that they're figuring, let's just get this over with. So then it becomes a simple majority. Now, the cardinals have to vote to permit this. In other words, they may say, no, we want to continue with the 2/3 majority. But if by the 34th ballot they're deadlocked, they can vote, all right, now we can change it, simple majority, let's see what happens. After each ballot, the ballots themselves, which are paper, they're burned, and that's when you see the smoke. Now, when a man is elected, he is asked a question, and the question is, do you accept your canonical election as Supreme Pontiff? Now, those words specifically are used, so it's really clear. You've been elected. are you going to accept this? And if he accepts, he says, yes, I accept. And then he chooses his name. And people are wondering, well, like, what would the name of the next pope possibly be? Could it be Francis II? Maybe. Would it be Pope Pius XIII? Maybe. Benedict XVII? John Paul III? I mean, maybe a different name altogether. That's totally up to the prerogative of the Pope. I'm kind of holding out, Cyrus, for Pope Patrick I. It wouldn't be the first until there was ever a second Pope Patrick. So Pope Patrick would suit me just fine. I'm not holding out that will be the name, but wouldn't that be great?
Has there ever been a Pope Cyrus? I'm guessing
no. Not that I know. No, I know that there hasn't been. That would be cool, though, wouldn't it? You'd lord that over me forever, wouldn't you?
That would probably be my favorite
I'd
part
never
of the
hear
whole
the
thing.
end of it.
Yeah.
The voting process is very ritualized. So when the cardinals are filling out the ballots, they simply write the name of the cardinal that they being all the cardinals are choosing. You fold the ballot in half. They come around with a paten or a plate, a metal plate, and you put it on the paten. Then they drop all these into a chalice. And then after each ballot, the votes are counted publicly, one by one, and they're verified by other cardinals who are standing there to scrutinize the process. So the goal is no monkey business. Not that we expect any monkey business, but they want to make sure everything is on the up and up, that the votes are clearly counted, they're verified, and then they're burned such that you know then whether or not this is it, we have a new pope, habemus papam, or they got to go back and do it again. Now, once a cardinal is elected and accepts, then he goes to a little room. It's not much of a room, really. It's known as the Room of Tears, and that's where he will get vested in his white cassock and the other garments that he would wear, including the ornate stole that you would have seen Pope John Paul II wear when he came out onto the balcony when he was elected, and Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Francis. So there's a certain attire that a newly elected pope will wear, and they have pre-made different sizes. You might have a fat pope, you might have a skinny pope, you might have a tall pope, you might have a short pope, you might have a tall and fat pope or a short and skinny pope. I mean, they have a variety of different possibilities. And of course, there's a tailor nearby who can quickly make alterations as necessary. But that'll take, maybe an hour, maybe half an hour, depends on how quickly the new pope wants to move. And once he's dressed, that's when the cardinals will come out on the loggia, this big ornate balcony on St. Peter's Basilica. And the senior cardinal archdeacon is the one who makes this announcement. It's all in Latin. And it concludes with habemus papam, which means we have a pope. And then he announces the name. So as I recall, when Cardinal Ratzinger was elected, habemus papam Cardinalem Joseph Ratzinger. And everybody went wild because everybody knew who Cardinal Ratzinger was. I was particularly happy. Everybody was saying it would be somebody else, and I was holding out for Pope Benedict XVI. I mean, I knew him only as Cardinal Ratzinger, but I was happy that day. And people are going to be probably, if I had to guess, erupting in euphoria because now we have a new pope. And that's the name of the game. You don't want the chair to be empty any longer than necessary. The empty chair, the sede vacante, it's a necessity when it comes to the time in between papacies, but you don't want that chair empty for any longer than it has to be. So those are some of the basic rules that are required. And we're seeing this unfold. This is history in the making. This is something that is nearly 2,000 years old. The conclaves only go back to like the 1200s. That's when the system of the conclave as we know it today was put into force. Prior to that, the bishops of Rome would be elected by the clergy of Rome, and even the people of Rome would have a say in that. And the voting was public. It wasn't private. It wasn't secret voting the way it is now. But because of the danger of people trying to influence who would be elected pope, gradually they saw the wisdom that this would be better done behind closed doors so there's less interference possible. But the process of electing a new pope, choosing a new pope, the successor of Peter, the next Bishop of Rome, is nearly now. We're just coming up on probably 35 years away from being exactly 2,000 years old. It's amazing when you think about it. So that's happening right now. And there'll be up-to-date coverage here at Relevant Radio on our website, Conclave 2025. You can get everything there up to the minute, including the Smoke Watch email alert that you'll get when you sign up at conclave2025.com. Put your email in there, and there's nothing to buy or anything, but it will immediately send you any updates about the conclave. And certainly whenever there's smoke, black or white, you'll be notified instantly. You'll be among the very first people to know when you go to conclave2025.com and put in your email for the Smoke Watch. This entire episode of The Patrick Madrid Show is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today. And thanks for listening.